Today's show is sponsored by Fender Guitars.
The lonely road to rock again, it calls to you, my friend. There's a place you must go, but to reach you will need a guitar. So bring a Fender guitar.
Today I'm talking to my friend Chris Carrabba. I shot this interview before I had my awesome Father's Day present of a real camera, so I look sort of janky, but Chris looks good. Chris always looks good. Chris gave me 2 cameras to edit. Chris is a very generous collaborator. I think the first time that we met Chris was possibly in 1998? 1999? Oh yeah, that's it. October 20th. October 20th of 2000. Thank you, Internet. October 20th of 2000 was when we played at the Wayne Firehouse in New Jersey. Chris was playing solo acoustic, and he opened up like a 12-band show that we were the last band on. And I remember that because, well, first off, because I thought that like just a dude playing acoustic guitar at a show was kind of not the normal thing that happened. Chris and I talk about checking your ego for the sake of the creative process when working with other people. And we also get into how sometimes the really cool thing you're holding on to might be exactly the thing you need to let go of for the sake of completing a song. And it's really hard when you're in the middle of it to see it that way, because it's usually something you worked really hard over, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. My conversation with Chris Carrabba happened May 14th of 2020.
All right. So walking into frame. Okay. Hey, Jim. What are you doing here? What a surprise.
I know. Fancy seeing you here. I was just like, cruising Zoom, and then all of a sudden you sat down and showed up.
I feel like Zoom cruising is a real thing now. Like, is that a thing?
It kind of is. I've had my 17-year-old had a class when this whole thing sort of started, and it was immediately shut down when someone cruised the Zoom in a explicitly profane way.
That's a very high school move.
It probably was a fellow student, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know who's tapped in and listening to this.
You mean people are going to listen to this?
Yeah, I know. It's just like now, talking about the struggles of internal judgment. Now we're fearing judgment on our internal dialogue about judgment.
I'm even like
it's
judging myself. Like, where do I look? Where do I look? Because we're talking here on this camera, and then you had this great idea of setting up a couple of other cameras. But where's my eye line supposed to be? I'm going to stay with you.
Stay with me. I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm right here. Yeah.
Studio looks sick.
Yeah, I got my my Pro Tools rig here and my outboard gear over there, and there's some things there. We have just enough stuff for us.
Right.
It's like we have just enough stuff where we have options, but not enough where we're going to A/B stuff into insanity.
That's what we have too. That's what I have here.
Yeah, and
I'm lucky to have like a pretty decently sized live room. That's one thing I'm lucky about, that my house has a deep basement. You've been here.
Yeah.
So, because it's on the hillside, the ceilings are like, I don't know, 13, 15 feet high. So great for drums. Have
you cut actual records there? Or do you still outsource drums to like a different room?
No, we did all the Twin Forks stuff here. We've done all the Dashboard stuff since I've been here. So, Crooked Shadows, the new record that I finished that isn't out yet as we talk, or probably won't be out for quite some time. Did some Further Seems Forever stuff here, done countless covers here, countless like collaborations. It's a great drum room. I mean, that's the kind of thing where you could go down the rabbit hole of trying to build yourself a great drum room, which can cost more than a house. People go crazy building out studios. And I've just hung some baffles.
That's sort of what we did here. Just the sort of like try to reduce parallel walls, try to give yourself some space. But I mean, I've been in commercial studios that didn't sound that great, and I've been in really crappy environments that were like, man, there's magic here.
With the exception of a handful, I'll choose just like a homey vibe. In fact, a home more often than not as my place to make a record. I've always wanted to do that thing. You hear about bands doing this. Maybe you've done this. I've never done it. Where they rent a house and they kind of make a studio out of this house, and they just hunker down and live there for a couple of months and make their record. There's something romantic about that idea.
I think that's how they made Blood Sugar Sex Magic, actually.
Well, that's in a mansion, though.
Yeah. Oh.
I don't think I can afford that rental.
Yeah. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to be a chilly, like, Blood Sugar Sex Magic house, but a house.
No. Yeah, just gotta have some magic in the house. The blood and the sugar and the sex, optional. Upgrade.
Yeah, those comes to... Okay, so we're looking at your
those
proposed
comes
budget.
At a price.
We're going to have to line item out the blood and the sugar and the sex, but the magic is all yours.
Hey, we do not... That's a non-starter. The blood is in there. It has to have the blood.
All right.
The magic. Let's get rid of the magic. It needs the blood. It's a very gothy record that we're making.
There's so many things that like aren't songwriting that go into like the song. I mean, there's some things that are like preparation, like obvious like writing exercises that aren't sexy at all. There's the 4-hour training run in the middle of nowhere with no one clapping that gets you ready for the actual race event.
Absolutely.
Like, are you still doing the like waking up writing?
Yeah. So I do this very odd thing now where not only do I just wake up and write. So we talked about this before where I have this exercise where I set a timer and I write. And when the timer goes off, I stop. And you get nothing but junk in the beginning of it. It's relatively short. It's 10 minutes. That is short. But what it does is like just by minute like 9 minutes and 30 seconds, you're finally getting somewhere. But you stop and you force yourself to stop when that alarm goes off. So you leave like the creative mind unsatisfied, and it kind of leaves you open to and wanting, right, for the rest of the process, for the rest of the day. But the thing that I've been doing lately, the last maybe almost a year, is when I'm in writing mode, I choose to wake up at a bizarrely odd hour, maybe 3 or 3:30 in the morning. And I like that. Maybe in my younger days, I'd have just stayed up till then before responsibilities and all that set in. But I like this idea. I wake up and there's an otherworldly sense because it's not what your body's like used to, and it's not the environment outdoors or even in your house that's normal. And you're in your familiar space, but there's something unfamiliar about it.
You're disoriented because you got up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that, like a dream, like coming out of a dream, like, wait, where am I?
Yeah. And what I was doing was like plying myself with coffee, and like that jolt was helping me too, but I've quit coffee. But I still find I can wake up and just kind of get to it. It's such a bummer. It's the second worst idea I've ever had, other than quitting alcohol. My life is so boring now. But yeah, I'm doing that. And there are factors, Jim, like you said about other factors. Like I've kind of redecorated since you've been here. I've got like a new living room set up. My studio for the obviously I can't take in a quick tour here for whoever's watching, but I'm in the live room now. There's a control room in another area. And then I have basically a living area with a couple of bedrooms down here and a living room, and we built a kitchen since you were here, and we redecorated. All that furniture that I had when you were here was like all stuff. Every time you move, you're like, we should get rid of this. We'll just keep it. We'll throw it for Chris to use in his creative space, and that's fine. But I finally was like, okay, I've been as creative as I'm going to be with all these surroundings, and so I bought some new furniture, redecorated and painted and stuff like that, and that had a huge effect. Like it was like, setting. It's your same setting, but you just change the parameters just enough that you're like, oh, everything is new. And what I like about that, to kind of circle back to what we're talking about having your own space and it being just good enough. But honestly, what we have, let's be fair, we both have pretty good gear and are really lucky to have it. And so we can do this kind of work in our own space. But
it totally makes sense to me. And I was thinking about actually switching up the studio here and seeing like moving our drum set location around.
How often do you do that?
Once every 17 years, maybe. We've done it once. I had this control section like where the drums were, and the drums just lived in the main room. Like we have different ideas for what this space could be for us. We made Bleed American, and the majority of our time making Bleed American, like the control room was where we were. And it was this tiny ass like space, like, but the live room was really nice. And we didn't do drums there. So it was like, there's this live room that's just super rad that has our amps, but no one's in there. Yeah. And we're all just in this tiny control room. Right. It's like, what's the point of this? So we wanted to make our room, like, you can't see it here, but like the whole room is, the control room is the live room, is the lounge. So everyone can be sort of awesome. Looking at each other, and there's no like, hitting the talk back button. Yeah, we really think that you should try that again. Like, I don't know, I have headphones on. What are you saying? We really think you should try that again. There's none of that.
Yeah, my control room, if you remember, is like in another room, and it's soundproofed and built out that way. But my live space, we definitely can all fit in here and do. We do a lot of recording where we're all in the same room. One thing I don't have is that like Pro Tools like remote for your iPad. That's sort of the next thing I just need to get, so I don't have to run back to the control room to
right. You just set a really long pre-roll and haul ass into the other room.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Now I've got a handful of friends that work with me here at the studio that will run sessions for us for sure. And I brought in producers here, and been really excited to know that they've worked in some of those great spaces and they love the room. There's a certain validation of expectation there. So in other words, I can say and be confident in saying it's not just my opinion, because I've gotten the feedback. No, I want to do my record in my house. And whatever maybe label I'm talking to may say like, well, what about this great, fabulous? Well, that's fine too. Only, this is already paid for.
You need a good name. You just need a good, a professional sounding name for the room, and say, yeah, we're recording at Kick-Ass Room Studios, Nashville. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
it's actually my house.
The name. That is the name of the studio.
Kick-Ass Room Studios, Nashville, Tennessee.
We actually call it, just because it's in my basement and I live in the South, we call it the deep, deep South.
That's good. That's good. Our space is called Unit 2. It's very professional.
Yeah.
But we've
the guys in Unit 3 are blowing it. I know.
Those Unit 3 guys, like, I don't know, amateurs, but Unit 2, that's where the pros hang out.
Definitely.
I think anybody who's been around the block and has some experience, they're not going to put their faith in gear and expensive things just for the sake of that. I think everybody, even the most like seasoned professional person, I think in the back of their head kind of longs for making something kick-ass just on a cassette format 4-track in their bedroom. How many kick-ass things have been made in a cassette format 4-track in someone's bedroom?
Absolutely true.
It's about the if it's a good idea, it'll transcend. Conversely, how many bomb, as in this kind of bomb, records have been made for $1 million at Electric Ladyland.
Yeah, just totally knows that. Hey, I just worked there for the first time. Which is strange because I lived like 2 blocks away for years and years and I never even went in.
It's gnarly.
It's gnarly. It's so cool. It's really cool. But that place, that's why I think it's legendary, because it has what we're talking about. It has that like sort of, you can imagine it is someone's home. Just happens to be the best sounding home with the best gear that anybody could have ever thought to have.
Right. It does kind of make a little bit of a difference just psychologically. There's an intangible quality to being in that electric kind of environment. Like when you get the amazing, fortunate opportunity to work in a room that's like, East-West / Cello 2 / Ocean Way, or like United, whatever those were, or, the Van Halen room at Sunset Sound. It's like,
I always did want to work at Ocean Way. Never did though. Did you? Have you?
I've been in there. I got to. We were working next door when it was called Cello to mix Futures, and I think one of the assistants was like, "Let's go say hi to Jack Joseph Puig." It's like I know his assistant. I was like, all right. No, it was Gil Norton.
He was like, with Gil?
Yeah, he was with Gil. Yeah. And he was like, let's go say hi to JJP. I'm like, all right, I'll tag along. And like that dude's room was nuts.
And so is he. He's a wild cat, man.
God
he's like,
bless.
He's like he looks, I love him. He's got this crazy mind. He's like, I think he's legendary for like racking his brain and just being like sleep deprived from like which cable to use, which guitar cable to use. And he's a really fantastic producer. But he's a character. He's got like a pirate vibe almost. We almost worked with him before we worked with Gil. When we worked with Gil, we almost worked with JJP.
I can see how those two guys would get along. They're both pretty intense and pretty like all in with what they're working on.
Yeah.
Like you better step up your game because you can't let an outside person be more all in than you. That was my takeaway from working with Gil is like, the very first time we met with Gil when we were fishing for producers, he came out to Arizona and we met with him in person, which is sort of a big deal, man. Like when you live in England, like I have no guarantee that I'm going to get this gig, but I'm going to fly to Phoenix. And we hung out with him. We showed him an idea for something, and it was like he couldn't help himself. He was like, okay, well, what if we did this? We moved this here. Like, what about this idea here? It's like we'd started making a record.
Yeah.
Which is rad.
I had the same experience with Gil. I really did. He's just that passionate.
You don't know what working with someone is going to be like until you actually work with him. And I think like that was probably the truth for him too. Like, I don't know what it's going to be like working with these dudes. Let's try working. So you just work. So many people are precious about their IP, I guess, their musical IP. Like, I don't want to give you too much away because,
especially, you mean like producers?
Yeah,
yeah.
But I don't know.
I haven't come across that too much.
A little bit. I mean, I've only met like half a dozen like producer people.
Yeah, me too.
And I've ended up working with like 4 of them. So it's like I only meet those people when we're about to make a record.
I remember when you called me about Gil and, what's it like to work with him? And then I remember Gil called me shortly thereafter, maybe even before, like I'm thinking about, trying to get to work with Jimmy Eat World. And
is this going to kill my career if I work with these guys, Chris? Tell me. Give me the straight answer.
Shut it. And I just remember thinking to myself, wow, I hope this happens. I'm so glad it did. Because I knew if nothing else, I knew like these are great minds come together that are going to really like find something in each other personally.
Since I've gotten more involved in like recording myself, I mean, I've always been interested in recording myself. Like in 7th grade, I got the cassette format for a track, and I started recording.
Tascam?
It was a Fostex, I think.
Ooh, big shot. I had the Tascam.
It might have been Tascam. I still have it. I got to dig it out.
Me too. Yeah.
I sometimes fantasize about going back and working on that, because the linear way of working is such a different way to think about things. Our transition from linear analog to digital was like a gradual one. Like we made Static Prevails, and that was to tape 100%. We made Clarity, and we recorded the drums on tape, and then we had the tape chasing Pro Tools, and then we recorded everything else in Pro Tools, and then dumped that to tape, and then mixed like the record basically Pro Tools chasing a SMPTE track on. I mean, the tape was chasing. Pro Tools was chasing a SMPTE track on the tape, so it was like sort of half and half. But the majority of, but then from then on, it was like all non-linear thinking, and it's a different way of approaching writing. You know, when you start working in that, and you don't have to wait for the thing to rewind or switch a reel, and you can just pick up and drop in anywhere to add or take away. It informs your songwriting process a little bit. Like every sort of advance that comes in your way informs your songwriting process, I think.
I think so too.
And production is that way. Like and every producer kind of brings a different vibe with what they have a different self-governor for how much is too much. How much is like kind of working with other people, especially producers, informed like your own personal process?
Hugely. I think I'm a student of all that stuff. You know, I soak it in because I love that process, that end of record making or song making, you know, the recording of it. I love that too. So I soak it in. I learn as much as I can. And I too have gone through from, you know, just a bedroom 4-track to an 8-track exciting, you know, and then, I mean, my graduation to totally digital was like every step. I mean, it went like, I got an 8-track, I was a 4-track cassette, 8-track cassette, then I got like a 12-track digital recorder, but it was still just a
still
hard
linear
interface, no screen. It's still linear. And then before I even got into Pro Tools, I used Radar for a while, which is essentially, for those that don't know, it's just like, it's a digital machine, but it runs like a tape machine, like a 2-inch tape.
I thought Radar sounded good. I thought like those.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
it does, but it isn't. What I'm saying is the whole interface is as non-visual as a recording just with a.
It's like a really, really, really nice ADAT.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Death Cab made most of their records until maybe until a couple ago. You know, they were making their big records with Radar.
Yeah,
still.
I remember hearing that Chris Wall was a big Radar advocate.
I'm pretty sure he still uses it when he produces records. You know, he's done so well as a producer. I'm pretty
Keeping
sure
it real.
That's what he does. That's his liking. That's what he likes.
The thing, I mean, that's the biggest thing, going from linear to like non-linear. Pre-non-linear, you're thinking about like, okay, I'm playing guitar along with this, and at this point in the song, I'm going to kick on these effects, and that's going to do that, and then we're going to record like that. When you switch to non-linear, you're like, it's easier to think like, no, this is going to be its own complete sound. We're going to take our time. We're going to set up a completely different setup that's just this. So when you come back to the writing stage for the next thing, you're thinking in your head like, there's a freedom to just drop in and put this thing specifically right here, and it's, you know, that's just kind of like a new level of to assimilate to your musicianship.
Yeah, and I feel like some people are of the school of thought like, well, you thrive in the limitations, and other people are like, there are no limitations. All you can do is thrive. And I think I've got a foot in both places.
Yeah,
Both
you need
places.
you need a healthy balance, because no limitations means you will never finish.
Never finish a record.
I don't function without limitations, whether it's temporal, like a deadline, or some kind of some sort of like overreaching theme that so this song is going to be played as a band, and that's the limitations I'm going to put on it. Or even like, okay, there's no guitars on this, that's the limitation. Like you need some kind of like way on a concept level to define. Otherwise you're just going to keep going and going and going.
So I can't, one place I can't set the limitations for myself. I employ all that, but when it comes to mixing, I've discovered I can't finish a mix. There's too many possibilities and too many other choices that are out there that you didn't make that maybe you should have made. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I could go back and do this all over again. And I'll just never finish the mix. I never became a good mixer, or even it's definitely not a great mixer. I never became a very good mixer because I would just get caught in that loop. Like, oh, all this possibilities here. And I had no parameter.
So the production possibilities kind of like take you into a tangent that you feel you need to explore. That's not unlike the pre-mix kind of stage when you're doing the whole journey of like, well, what if we tried this? Well, what if we tried this? Well, maybe it needs to be 2 BPM. You know, like what I found is like it usually leads you into a giant circle that's not where you end up is not so far away from where you started, maybe a little bit further away, but you kind of need to go down that road so that you know.
Yeah.
You know what doesn't work.
When you think about something as simple of like, well, we just played this song 17 times at 17 different tempos to figure out we needed to move it to BPM.
Right.
But sometimes that's what it takes, and it's worth the effort.
But at some point you need to make a decision. Like, okay, that takes like some faith in yourself. Like, I can make this decision that this is good. It stops. The insanity stops.
Yeah. So I can't do that with mixing. So I definitely don't mix. I don't mix my stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's another ear that hasn't been listening to the same rough for a month. They can make the decision of, oh wait, no, this is probably something you should feature. This other thing you have pretty loud in your rough isn't doing what you think you need to do. It needs to be this element needs to be featured. This is the hook.
I remember working with, Daniel Lanois on a record, and I came in one morning I worked one day with him on this weirdly intricate, one of those like finger bender ones, you know, like it's not hard, but it's just weirdly intricate. And it was on a 12 string, which I don't play. So I just wasn't comfortable. So it took a lot of takes, and we spent a good portion of the day just getting the guitars done and then maybe doubled or whatever it was. And then we built the whole song around it all night. And it was this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. I was really proud of that guitar too, because I put the effort in. It wasn't enjoyable, to be honest with you, but the result was. And then I went back to, we were staying in Toronto where he has a place. Went back to my hotel. I came back the next morning and he said, you got to listen to this. I think we really nailed it yesterday. And he played it. And I said, this is like great. Where's the 12 string? Where's the guitar? He's like, I erased it. You what? You erased it? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, but that was the glue. That was like, we built everything else around. He goes, yeah, but it's all gone now. And now everything that was floating around it is implying that it's there. And it was a really cool exercise. And like, I definitely took, like the song was like suddenly so much better. Because the thing that I thought that was the feature of the song certainly wasn't.
I heard a rumor that Kanye West making he might work all this way all the time, but I heard when he was making Yeezus that like when they were, you know, they basically like muted half the tracks, and then like what you end up hearing is not necessarily like the main thing, but the thing that is a response to the main thing. Oh, yeah. And now that's the main thing. Conceptually, I think that's pretty rad if it's true, because then what you're hearing is like so more refreshing. It's like this embellishment, and so like when you're listening to that, like you interpret that as the anchor, and it's a pretty creative anchor. You know, like that's weird. How'd they ever think of like that? Comes in on the and of two, and it's and then it goes away. It's like, but that's like the hook. That's like the main thing here. Like, what is that? I don't know if it's true, but conceptually, I think that's sort of a cool thing. And it's kind of like what you're saying there. It's like sometimes the cool thing you're holding on to is really the thing you need to let go of.
So often, man. So often is. And that can be true with any part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, do you find that with like thematically when you're working on lyrics that sometimes like the thing that inspired you is really just a dead end, and where it ends up is really far away?
Yeah. Whatever lyrical thing that you were like, well, I'm gonna hang my hat on this. You stay with that, You're just trying to express whatever that was the best you can. And then you realize the writing's taking you further and away from it to something else that's maybe more important or just more demanding. It's like see me kind of thing, And it's really hard to let go of it's hard to let go of the thing that brought you to the moment.
Yeah, but my 12 string.
Yeah, I think that's the only time I ever played a 12 string on a record.
I hate 12 strings.
Oh no, wait a second. But that's not the only time a 12 string is on one of my records. So I was making a record in at Stratosphere in Manhattan with my friend Adam Schlesinger, who's recently passed away.
From
COVID-19.
That's crazy.
52, very young guy, and incredible musical mind. Anyway, but just a sweetheart of a man. I love him. But he owned it with James Iha, from Perfect Circle and Smashing Pumpkins. And we were working in the A room. They had a couple of, B rooms. And James was in there working. And he would kind of nod at us or whatever. But he was in his little kind of cave. It was a very small room he was working in. And Johnny, our guitar player, and I were out in the little lounge that all those doors opened up to, and we were talking about what a song might need. And Johnny was like, "Man, if I only had a 12-string Rickenbacker, I really think that would sing." And then like a door opens and like a hand kind of like comes in with holding a 12-string Rickenbacker, and it's James Iha, and he's like, "Hey man, why don't you use this?" And I remember like going like, oh, because he's kind of a hero of mine, just like looking at him in awe. And Johnny goes, "Really? Thanks, James Iha."
I imagine James Iha is the kind of dude who like has one in a sling behind his back he can pull out at any time. Like, here's a 12-string Rick. I found that
he got it from somewhere.
Man,
so
anytime we have a couple 12 strings, and I found that like you get. I just leave them. I just leave them put away. When I want a 12 string, I'll do like a take, and then I'll we have an electric and an acoustic laying around in Nashville tuning, and I found just doubling with that is about, it gets you there without the hassle of making sure a 12 string is intonated and tuned correctly. Maybe if I played 12 string all the time and I just had it like kind of like ready to go all the time, I'd feel differently. But usually like a Nashville tuning.
It can be a great tool. Like the Decemberists use it with great prowess,
Some people,
and it really drives.
Some people like really make it work, and God bless them.
I guess you got to commit to it though. Like it's just never been it always sounds to me. See, they make it sound tough. There's like a rough and tumble nature to their guitar sound that I like quite a bit. It's real woody, but to me, 12 strings generally will sound just like real tinny and real toppy, just like strings, not like a guitar.
Like an ovation. Which is like, it's wild. I love The Cure so much, and so many pictures of Robert Smith. He's holding that ovation. He's holding this ovation. It's like, man, I want to emulate this guy in all ways but one. I mean, it's like the strumming of like in between days. It's all about the percussiveness of it.
Yeah.
Like it definitely works for that. So much of like so much of the choices you make are based on what you're responding to. So I wonder
how it's hitting you and what have you.
So sometimes I wonder if some of those great iconic kind of like sounds and parts are more based on like the response rather than like a decision. Like I love this. I love this ovation.
Right.
This ovation sound. It's kind of like, no, well, I have the ovation sound, and what sounds good is like using the percussiveness of like it's about that. And then that informs the choices later on down the line. Then you end up with like, in between days.
I think that's probably how I fell into the open tuning stuff. Because I didn't really have a band, and even when I had a band, sometimes or on some of the songs, it was still like just my heavy right hand that had to be the drummer in a lot of cases.
Yeah, because you were like accompanying yourself.
So that gave me a greater understanding as a producer later, understanding what the song needs, because you've been the only thing to help the song. It's just me and my two hands and my voice. So sometimes it's like you said, limitations can lead you to the right place. And then you finally get like no limitations. I got a drummer, I got a bass player, I got a guitar player, piano player. I've got a million tracks here. I could put strings on this if I want to. You got to be careful with your choices. That taught me that, at least, I was fighting to be more with so little, and then I find myself trying to fight to be less with so much.
You gotta check yourself. Those freedoms are tools. Like how are you going to use it? I mean, sometimes you need to spaz out to realize like, oh wait, I only need a fraction of this tool. I only need like a sliver of this tool to really do what I want to do. But
and that can be like this great feeling of relief, or it can be like this huge disappointment when you have that when that revelatory moment can go one of two ways. Eventually, it's both. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's the right thing, but you're either like crushed, or you're like, good, thanks God. Thank God I don't need all of this.
Like an effect pedal that you use for like one part of one song, but it's just the right. Nothing else does that.
Yeah,
it's like $1,000 gag for like 15 seconds of the song. But I can't.
But then that brings me to like thinking about your dedication for your live sound with your Axe effects and the way that you program song by song, part by part, to get all those choices you made years ago or recently, whenever the song that you're working on, and I don't do that. I've got like a handful of sounds that I think replicate well enough what a live version of this should be. When I see you, I'm just like, man, I'm doing it wrong, because everything is like, there's a satisfaction when you hear this, the sense memory's delivered. When you hear, like you could be playing the same notes, but but you have the real sound that you had when you made that record that may have been that $1,000 gag, but you have it. And it brings me closer and closer to the thing that I embraced. And of course, there's too many variables in a live setting for anything to ever be stale. Like just because you have all the same things, sounds for every section of the song, still every section is going to be different than it was on the record. But that's the anchor.
Yeah,
it's a live show, but you're hooked into that other place that you've invested. Like me with your records, I've invested so much time, and they've given me so much, and I've got my own personal connections that have nothing to do with what your intention was, maybe, or maybe they have that in common. I don't know. And you're up there giving it your all live, but those tones are there. And it's like, it's just keeping me in the moment the whole time while being in a new moment with the song. Love that.
I had a good idea of what I was getting into, and I gave myself about a month to just get lost.
I remember talking to you about that as I was starting to get into Axe FX, and you said to me, well, first thing you should know is be ready to lose a month of your life. And you were right, and I didn't go nearly as far as you did. I mean, it's just like, I know how to use it though now.
Well, yeah, because it's like, okay, you can do whatever you want. There's no limitations, but you have to sort of go on like that giant circle journey to get back to like something simple. You have to know the rules before you break them. Kind of. Yeah. So like I had to explore everything, and there's a lot to explore with the Axe effects. Before I got around to like the mentality I have of like how to actually implement it, which is basically like.
So now that you use those, sorry, go ahead.
Like, what do I want? What do I want to hear? Okay, just that's all you need to do is get that instead of like,
Yeah.
well, if I route this here and if I use this as sort of like an aux send for an effect, I can have the compressor actually compressing the reverb and the delay as a separate thing, kind of like I would like as an aux send in a recording environment, and I could route that back in. Do I want the compressor after the delay? It's like, just make it sound like this. Here's the sound. Like, that's what you want. Just do that. Like, get that. Like, you don't have to A-B
So
everything.
what about, now that you're like such an expert with Axe-Effects, and those that aren't familiar, Axe-Effects is this incredible amp modeling tool, and like has this wealth of it's like every pedal you could have ever imagined, with no limitations and almost no limitations on how many you can use on any given sound.
Right.
It's just an incredible tool. But so when you came to Axe-Effects, you were coming from obviously an analog amp sound with all your pedals and all your choices. You make all those. But now that you have it and are so expert at it, do you use Axe-Effects when you're recording now, or do you use the
I'll
pedal
use
boards
both
and the amps and stuff?
I'll use both. There's some times where I can just get something with the Axe-Effects because I've been around the circle. I know what it can do, and I'll just have that as another tool to use. And I know what my regular, tube stuff around the studio does. So that's like a tool I can use. I'll just go with what I feel. Whatever I feel it needs, and like the Axe-Effects is really just a tool for that. Sometimes I'll use the Axe-Effects as just like a bypass and use the I won't use like the amp or cabinet simulator aspects of it, and I'll just use that for purely like a delay effect, and then run that into an amp.
I do that too.
I haven't. Although another thing you could probably do that I haven't messed around with too much is using that as like a post effect. Like here's my dry guitar signal. I want like a particular reverb or delay or some kind of like processing that the Axe-Effects does. You can use that as just like an aux send and run that there, and then run that back into your recording. Kind of like you would a plugin, but it's like an outboard piece of gear.
Yeah, I've never tried that. I'd like to try that.
Another week wasted of your life messing around with what you can do, using the Axe-Effects as a outboard piece of gear.
Yeah, there's my week gone.
There's your week. Let's maybe talk about like the process, like the actual process, because I think there's probably more people that are like, how do you even write a song, rather than what do you miss about Pro Tools 7.4? So like when you're sitting down and you come to that decision to let yourself let go and create something, like what's that initial step look like for you?
So the initial step looks like pages and pages. I like to use a pencil and just clean unlined white paper.
Yeah, I have to write. I don't understand people that use computers for journaling or for songwriting. I have to use paper.
Yeah, it's a tactile thing. I need it. And I write. And then I don't have any expectation of myself on my good days. I don't have any expectation of myself or what I should be writing or what I could be writing, what I might like later. I just write. It's nonsense, a lot of it.
Like stream of consciousness kind of?
For the most part, it's stream of consciousness, and then I'll go on it. I'll find some theme to hang on to for a minute. And so this much of that page kind of makes sense, and then the rest doesn't. And this gets longer and longer. The threads get longer and longer. And sometimes I can go back and realize they were all pointing to where I was going to end up much later, and find that there's usable lines in there that were working towards that all along, or for that all along. And then I'll end up writing it's usually just one eureka line that's like, oh, that's the song I want to write. And I just chase that. I'm on it like a dog on a bone. And then conversely, the other way that I kind of come into it oftentimes is just on my phone, I'll use a voice memo and just kind of noodle and hum. And then I start, oh, that's kind of a cool riff. And then I start singing over its babble. But in listening back to the babble, you can almost hear the formulation of a story or lines or lyrics or words. And a lot of them are not words, they're just sounds. But now you're interpreting yourself, stream of consciousness, through another stream of consciousness moment. And I like that juxtaposition. And that's where I find that I have a lot of success as a songwriter.
For me, I think it's easier to contribute rather than to like create. Coming up with a music, like just noodling, you're sort of like, you're not really that focused, but your subconscious is kind of speaking in a feeling way that you can't quite verbalize. You're letting that happen. And then you have something concrete you have the slightest hint of something concrete to latch onto. So like a scat vocal track, like you're saying, I do that too. It's like, totally ridiculous sounding if you were in the room listening to it, but it's not for anybody else. It's just for you. So you listen back to that and like, oh, that kind of sounds like I said this. What's that? And what's that really mean? Like, okay, so I said that word, I'll develop that into like a line. Then you're kind of off to the races there, responding and contributing and then responding and then contributing and then responding.
There's got to be some part of your mind that's working in the background the whole time. Like probably now while we're talking, for guys like us we have some compulsion to write songs. We would do it even if we weren't employed
we have
this way.
An affliction. We're cursed to have this in our head that we have to do this.
It's a little bit of a curse sometimes too, because when you aren't writing, man, have you ever felt worse than when you can't write? I mean, it really is
all the time. All the time, I feel worse. I feel worse all the time, and then I'll have like a breakthrough, and then it's like, man, things are good, and then it goes back to feeling worse.
Yep.
Sometimes, like, you can't, if you're in a regular mode where you're being creative, like you can't help it. It just sort of interjects itself at all hours of the day, forcing you to stop whatever it is you're doing to make some kind of document of that idea that just came in that you need to add to. Before we made our last record, I went and actually sat through all of my voice memos since I've started making voice memos. Wow. And I tried to sort them. I've never done that before. Like, okay, here's some stuff. Here's some stuff that might have that. Oh yeah, I kind of remember that. That's going in the A folder.
I love voice memos. I love cataloging it and having it for later. But if I often find if I don't just pounce on the moment relatively soon, they're just like little nuggets or jingles that I'm like, oh, that could have been something. I don't find that I have a lot of success going backwards. I do go back and I try. Maybe in listening to them, the next song I write is informed by it. Maybe so. But I don't find that I'm often successful in actually using that impetus of an idea.
For me, it has to be
myself.
For me, it has to be a really long time to where it's almost like a new idea. Either it's going to happen in like 48 hours completely.
Oh yeah.
Or you need to put it away for a few months.
Yep.
Or a year. Like we've had stuff we've shelved because I was stuck on it that ended up being like a single on a record 3 years later.
Wow.
Like that happens a lot. That happens a lot. But I can't, like, I've ranked, and it goes back to like, maybe I was too precious with my initial prompt. Like, here's the thing I'm interested in. This is cool. I want to explore this. But I didn't quite pay enough attention to where the journey was pointing me. And I tried to steer it in a way that maybe it didn't want to go, but I was holding on to it because it was the 12-string part. Like...
The song has its own idea what it should be.
It does. I forget that the song knows better than me.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's so easy to get in its way. It's really hard to remember who's the boss.
Not me.
Not me.
Not me. I know. It's like
I'd like to think that guys like you and I are like craftsmen, but and part of that craft though is understanding your place and your role in the business. So
sometimes your late career Matisse just sort of artworking, directing where people put things, and it's not the actual manufacturing. Isn't really the actual like getting your hands dirty in paint isn't up to you. You got to sort of let go.
Letting go. So much of this has been about letting go. It's a big part of the process. But like you said, you do it later, you do it early, you do it in the middle, you do it later. You just have to keep reminding yourself to let go of what you think is the most important thing, because it might not want to be, and it truly may just be you being in the way of what is the most important. It's interesting too, on the occasion where you write with somebody else, and and you have a definitive idea of what as this is happening in the moment, like this is going here. But they are going someplace else in the same moment, in the same place. And something I learned in doing that is you've got to relinquish your idea that you should control where you think the song should go, and allow the person you're with or the people you're with to pull just as hard in their direction. And if you usually when you're like, that's not as good, if that's what you're thinking in your head, it really means like, oh, I don't know where they're going yet.
There's your ego you got to check when you're working with other people, especially like a band or like a group of songwriters, that you should really be excited to hear what they're going to contribute, because that gives you an opportunity to respond rather than like holding on to your idea because it's yours.
Yeah,
there is that.
You don't learn a hell of a lot just holding on to your idea.
When you end up in it's exciting to come up with something that feels complete, of course, just on your own. But it's also really rewarding to end up in a place that wasn't your idea, and it wasn't their idea, and it's a place that none of you would have ever experienced had you not like decided to each let go a little bit and take the trip.
So which do you enjoy, or which do you enjoy more, and which do you employ more? Like writing alone or writing around or with other people? And those are different things.
Yeah.
I guess writing around people can infuse a song with something, which isn't the same as writing with someone else. I
think as long as I end up with finished lyrics or something, I don't care how I get there. Whatever's going to be, but both are exciting, like I'm fortunate that I get to work with people that I trust creatively, and their contributions are going to push it in a way that aren't mine, but I trust, and that ends up in a good place. I don't know if I would enjoy music at all, like as much as I do, if I didn't have like that experience to dive into sometimes. The real heavy lifting for me is lyric writing, and that is always just like alone, and I feel like it has to be inspired.
Yep.
I
feel the same way.
Whether that's like chasing something, that journey I feel like I have to go on alone. It's tough to be in a room with people and feel like I'm getting that. I mean, some people, that's all they know, and I really wish I had some of that, because I feel like I could get a lot more work done.
I feel that way too, but I feel like it's like you lose something though in the group setting. Sure, can be a quicker way to get a result, but I'm not always sure it's the result that you're hoping for.
It also probably depends on the intention of the group too. Like if it's a songwriting camp kind of vibe, where you're going for, where it's like I've never been a part of one. Have you ever been a part of like a songwriting camp, or like a band's worth of strangers together trying to work on something?
Not really. I've helped a lot of people do songwriting, and I've done my handful of like one-on-one or me with two people, but never like a whole band, and certainly not. It's usually like two people from a band that I'm helping them write a song for, or one person from a band. Or it's just like like more often than not, it's like pals that I'm like, man, I really would like to write with that person, so see if something comes of it, And there aren't any expectations, so that makes it a lot easier. It's not like when we've written together, it wasn't like for a purpose, like, oh, this band needs this song.
You have to,
or I need this song, or you need this song. It's just like, oh, let's just see if we can write a song.
Yeah, for me, it's like you have to just kind of not have the expectations there for it. But I mean, you're in a town where if you don't perform, like you're not paying your rent. Kind of.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not part of that grind.
I know.
To be quite fair,
I'm fascinated by that.
The burnout rate must be so high.
You think about like dudes like back in the day, like working for record labels who songwriters for record labels. Who went
Tin Pan Alley?
Went to 9 to 5. That's what you did. You go to the office. You're writing songs for like the artists to record, and some of those songs are transcendent to today. Like they end up with amazing
Carole
stuff.
King.
Yeah, they end up with amazing stuff, like professional songwriters.
Yeah,
like I'm fascinated.
there are those among us in our generation, but they're not.
It's a different skill set.
I wouldn't even know how to begin to think like they do, like the Ryan Tedders of the world. I don't know what he's figured out, but it's special and it's exciting.
It's kind of like going to medical school. Like you divert off toward your specialty. Like I just want to do podiatry. It's sort of like I want to just do songwriting for other people. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people that have kind of crossed the gap between like I'm an expert songwriter, but I also perform. I'm also like the person. Maybe like Charlie XCX is probably in that camp, or
maybe I would throw Jack Antonoff in there.
Yeah. He'd be another one of those people that I hate that can do everything.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I know, if he wasn't so damn likable, you just hate him.
If only you were more of a dick. If you were more of a dick, I'd feel better about me.
Yeah, can you help me with that, Jack?
That's a pretty dick thing to say, actually. Why can't you be more of a dick so I can just do it for me?
Yeah, what's wrong? You're so selfish.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Chris. It's really awesome talking to you, man. I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
It's great to see you, man.
Yeah.
It's so strange. Jim, we're in such a weird... This is people. This is so... I've needed to just see your face and be with you. It's not that long ago that we were...
Yeah.
I was with you.
Yeah, I mean, you had to pull the plug on your...
The world has changed.
Like, it was like mid that tour that, like, things kind of went off the rails.
Yeah, it was. But I'm glad that I got to see you during it, and I'm glad I got to do some of it. But yeah, it was just weeks ago that I saw you, and now here we are with a different world.
It's a different world. It's the surprise writing year.
Yeah.
Man, I love talking to Chris. Chris is such a good guy. He's so grown up. He's a grown up. You know, he is like, I think about 4 or 5 months older than me. So that makes sense that he's, you know, a wise elder. Chris was in a motorcycle accident not too long ago. And I'm sure he'd appreciate it if he stopped by one of his social properties and checked on him. Do an internet social property well visit for Chris. My thoughts are with you, Chris. I hope that you feel better soon and you're back up and doing windmill scissor kicks soon. So I hope you guys are staying healthy, sane. Hope your creative projects are coming together in these times. And I will see you again soon.